Welcome back to Philosophy of the Barber. Today's guest is Chris. I'm sorry.
Clarino.
Thank you. I'm having a brain fart when it
It's
comes
okay.
to reading and pronouncing today. He is the manager of the Scuttlebutt Barbershop location in Newmarket, New Hampshire. He's been a manager there for 2.5 years. And there's also a second location, the Scuttlebutt, in Portsmouth. But he is primarily in Newmarket. He has been a barber since 2015 and has graduated from New England School of Barbering. Welcome, Chris.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for saving me from butchering your name.
Oh, not a problem. You're not the first one to.
So, what do we start out with typically is talking about your background and how you ended up finding barbering as a profession in the first place. So, give us the little Cliff's Notes.
Okay. So a couple cliff notes. I was raised in a military family, and barbering was always very big to my father. So barbering became very big to me. Before my dad became an officer, it was much easier to give 4 sons buzz cuts at home. It saved money, it saved time. But after my dad did become an officer, he would take us to the military barber. All 3 of my older brothers got high and tights, and my mom thought I always looked cute with a flat top, so I always got a flat top. I don't know why, but that's what she thought. So barbering has always been very special to me with the connection with my father. The other thing is I'm very proud of my Sicilian heritage, which comes from my father's side. And everywhere you go, every TV show or movie you watched, the barber was always of some kind of Italian or Sicilian heritage. And that always was in the back of my mind. So barbers are always hardworking. I've always had a huge love and respect for the profession, a very old, classic profession. And yeah.
So, what made you decide to finally go to New England School of Barbering as opposed to some of the other options that we have here in northern New England?
Okay. So I remember one day in barber school, a lot of times the students that go there are recommended to go there either by a barber or a friend, someone who's been through the course, or people that have just been in the career. I was an anomaly to that. Being from Vermont, I had no idea that New England School of Barber even existed when I was looking. The only school in Vermont was a place called Aveda, which offered a barbering course, but I didn't want that. I wanted a barber school. So I went to good old Google and I entered in New England school. Entered New England Barber School, and literally the first thing that came up was New England School of Barbering. And I remember clicking on the website, looking at the page, and yeah, that was my first experience with it. The interesting thing with me, though, is I'm not always one to follow through with everything I say I'm going to do. A trait I'm not exactly proud of. So there were many times that I told myself I was going to pick up the phone and I was going to call the school and talk to them, and I actually didn't. Or I would dial all but the last number and then hang up. I don't know why, but I did. And then I remember one day I quickly pressed that last number and then just waited for someone to answer the phone, and it was actually Miss C, the owner, who answered the phone. And I chatted with her, and I remember we set up a time that I could go and check the school out. And I remember it was a Tuesday, and so my dad and we drove the 2 hours from where I'm from in Vermont to Concord. And I remember checking out the school. I could see how happy my dad was with the fact that I was looking to go to barbering. And I myself was happy that I was doing this, since I had a history of saying I was going to do something and then not following through with it. It was scary a little bit, but it was quite exciting at the same time. Um, I remember when we got home after doing the tour, my mom and dad talked, and they came to me and told me they wanted to pay me to go to barber school, or they wanted to give me the money to go to barber school, because NESOB, the financials to get in there is very different than most other schools. Most people usually had to take out a private loan, and then usually with those, you have to pay them off like a month after you get them. My parents, they wanted to pay me, and they wanted me to have a good education, and they told me you wouldn't have to pay us back, or start having to pay us back, until you got a job. And I was flabbergasted. I was making plans in my head of what I was going to do. I was going to get a license. I was going to go back to Vermont. I was going to open my own shop, because where I'm from in Rutland, Vermont, there's barbershops, but none of them, or actually one of them, actually does hot lather shaves. And I remembered shaving was something very big in my mind. Almost every shop in Rutland doesn't even have a latherizer. They don't do any form of shaving, not even the back of the neck. And that was my plan. I was going to go to school. I was going to get my license. I was going to go back to Rutland. I was going to open my own shop. And I remembered, I was going to center it around my dad. I would have my dad probably come in every Friday, and I'd give him a haircut and a shave, and I would do all that stuff. And unfortunately, on March 24th, the end of that same month I toured the school, my dad passed away. And I was completely devastated. Right before we left the hospital and I was able to see him one more time, I broke down, because I could just see all those plans in my head just now disappearing, because of the fact that they centered around my dad. And I actually started feeling like, you know what, I'm not going to go to barber school, because once again, it's how I was. But a couple weeks later, I was like, no, I'm going to do this. My dad was happy with me going to do this. And for some reason, my resolve became steel. I'm going to barber school, no matter what. And I remember I went to my mom and I asked her if she could still honor the deal that her and dad gave me. I was honestly expecting her to say no. And to be honest, I was okay with that. I was already figuring out where I could get loans from to go. And my mom told me that my dad had apparently various life insurance policies. He had survivor benefits from the military. He had VA benefits, all this stuff coming to my mom. And she said, give me a week and I will get back to you. And when she did, she told me that the deal was still on. So I went back to the school to sign paperwork, and in September of 2015, it began. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I had no idea how hard it was actually going to be.
I don't think anybody does when they go to barber school.
No,
or any school.
Especially NESOB.
Well, I mean, from our experience, because we're both graduates, and this is by no means a commercial for them.
Oh, no, but yes.
Because of our experience, we can relate to each other. It is what we have found to be as a boot camp version of what your typical barber school experience in New England would be.
Mm-hmm.
Where
definitely.
They push you.
Yes.
And they push you hard.
And they push you to the line, but they never push you over the line.
Or if they do, it's like just over and they immediately pull back and apologize.
Yes. Now, one thing that's different with me to you is when I went to school, I was technically a student of Miss C's. She was starting to take over more of the education, where before that, it was mostly Mr. C was kind of frontlining everything. But at that time, Mr. C was starting to pull back a little bit. He was starting to get into other projects. And Miss C was starting to kind of grab the reins of the school. So that was a difference from what I've been told of the past with Mr. C to Miss C coming in her own at that school.
Well, I feel like you got to experience that that journey for her into developing into an instructor that could hold her own.
Oh, definitely.
Because I mean, as anyone who is a junior to a senior, it's you follow their lead, and as long as they're leading, you follow.
Oh, yeah.
But once you're put into that leadership position, you have to make it your own, and it never works when you try and do it the other person's way. You have to find your own groove.
And 9 out of 10 times, when you're just starting out, you most likely are going to follow that person before you's way because it worked for them. And you kind of have to stumble through it and learn, this isn't my way. This is not how I do it.
And they have very different styles.
Very, very different styles. One benefit I had was, I remember one week, a lot of the master barbers were there up in the upper portion with Mr. C, and a lot of the barber courses members like myself were either out of school or sick, or they just weren't there. So I literally had 1 week where it was me and Miss C, and that was the best week I've ever had at that school, where it was one-on-one. Whatever came in, I didn't even have the chance to say no or run away, which unfortunately I did a couple times. I was there, and I was forced into it, and it was great.
Well, it's a great test for going into a shop where you don't have the safety net of an instructor. You don't get to decide what walks through that door.
Mm-hmm.
So especially if you get that like partway through your program, it really adjusts your perspective and also kind of builds your confidence going, all right, so if I can do it here at this point in my education, then going out into the workforce shouldn't be so scary.
Oh, agreed. I remember the first time I did a flat top. The guy sat down in my chair and basically said, I get a flat top. And I remember I instantly 180'd on my heel and looked at Miss C and said, I don't know how to do a flat top. And she's like, I know. You've never done one before. And that was that. And then I just turned right back around and I did a flat top.
I think everyone remembers their first flat top.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's such a traumatic experience.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
My first flat top was a fella named Craig, who still goes to the school today, so I'll run into him whenever I go down and visit and get my haircut. And it was an iconic experience in my mind and his, because he's one of those customers who's been going to the school for so long that he enjoys messing with students.
Oh, yeah.
He is the type to slouch in his chair, have you pump it up, and then sit up straight, so you have to put it down and do that. The type that'll try and fluster you on purpose. But I distinctly remember getting in my chair, and Mr. C's like, we're going to do a flat top class today. And so, like, other class members came over to watch because they're like, ooh, flat top. And he, making eye contact with me, giving me quips, trying to, make me flustered. And I'm just giving it right back to him.
Yeah.
I'm just like winking at him in the mirror as Mr. C's talking. And he remembers that experience as much as I do today. He's like, you were crazy. You never flustered. You were never nervous. He's like, I've never seen anybody like that.
Yeah.
So that's like a warm place in my heart with a connection with a customer that I might see 2-3 times a year. But for us to share that experience is phenomenal, and to have that memory.
Let's see if I can think of any lovely moments I had at school. I remember this older guy that would once again frequent the school a lot, and he was very proud. He had a very flowing head of hair, very, very sort of late 50s, early 60s, just that nice, that wavy flow. And I remember I started doing a haircut, and unfortunately, I cut it a little too short, as unfortunately a student usually did. And he still left with a great haircut, just a lot shorter than he probably wanted it to be. Thanks to Miss C, that she definitely saved that one.
And, we just didn't see him for a couple weeks longer than
No,
usual.
no, you didn't. I heard the first time he came back was well after I left school.
And sometimes that is the case. But there's an understanding that when you enter any school, that for a haircut, that it'll be a solid haircut when you leave. At least it should be if the instructors are doing their job. But students are learning, so they might learn faster than others in not so great ways. But that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
I myself go back to school half the time to watch them squirm, because there's nothing quite as concerning to a barber student than finding out that the person in your chair is not only a licensed barber, but they own a shop.
Yeah, the moment they do learn that they are being, the moment they learn that they are giving a haircut to an actual professional, it is something else. It is like, oh, this person does what I'm struggling to do right now for a job. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is going to be terrible.
Well, and part of that is the mindset, because of course we lived through it.
Yes.
That there's an expectation in that student's head that because that person is a professional, that they are watching every single thing that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe they're looking for a barber to hire or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is running through your head as you're trying to remember your procedure.
Oh, yeah.
Or trying to remember how to talk.
Mm-hmm.
So you just add that to your own stress, when in reality, at least for me, after the first couple of years of being licensed, I no longer paid attention much to the way they were cutting my hair,
Yeah.
as long as they were like not screwing up a couple of particular things.
Yeah, yeah.
It was I'm just trying to relax and get a haircut. Like I'm not gonna judge how your shear and comb is going.
To be 100% honest, when I get a haircut now, I close my eyes. We can't shut it off. When we see a haircut being done, even on our own heads, we watch it and we are particular about it. When I get a haircut, I don't want to do that. I want to close my eyes and relax and just enjoy it. So that's what I do. Because I know if my eyes are open, I'm going to be looking at the blades they're grabbing. I'm going to be looking at the angle of their comb as they're doing shear over comb on my hair. I'm like, no. Enjoy.
The only thing I can't shut off anymore if I'm the one in the chair is the sanitation aspect. Like, I'll be looking at your station and looking at
definitely.
your tools.
Definitely.
But
yes.
Other than like making sure you don't square off my sideburns instead of,
Yeah.
pointing them, I don't really like care how you get to the destination. You can figure it out.
Yeah.
So it took a while for that to kick in, though, because I mean, when you're young and out of school, especially where we went, like we leave school with a certain measure of confidence that is uncharacteristic of someone just out of any school.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because if you compare the average student leaving an ESOB to an average student leaving another barber program, where we are in our growth is elevated, because in my opinion, we're held to a higher standard because they're teaching and aiming for being workforce ready.
Yes.
They're not aiming for the state board exam.
They're not aiming for
the state board exam is an afterthought. They want you to be ready to work.
Because they're not preparing you for the test. They're preparing you for the lifestyle after it.
Correct.
Which is why, there were days that did we get to eat lunch? Yes. Was it exactly at the time we normally ate lunch? No. Was there times that you basically had to stand all day and could not sit down once? Yes. Well, that's the barbering lifestyle. You're going to go days. If you work in a shop that doesn't do appointments, more of a walk-in shop, yeah, you have the chance of standing on your feet all day.
If you choose to do so.
If you choose to do it. Agreed. When I started working at Scuttlebutt, the owner had basically just gone to appointments, and I was the new guy, so I was basically the walk-in barber. And there were some days where I did less haircuts than the other two barbers that were there with their appointments. There were some days I did double the amount of haircuts they did.
Just all depends on how you want to manage your time.
Oh yeah.
I've always, after a certain point, because in school we are very much taught the concept of the haircut comes first, and you take the chance. If there is a lull, you take that chance for a break or for a lunch.
Yeah.
And I moved away from that philosophy as a shop owner with enough of my friends who, over the age of 50, who were barbers and had medical issues in the shop, like having strokes in the shop
Oh yeah.
on busy days.
Oh yeah.
Or having heart attacks, or having really high blood pressure to where you're about to have a heart attack. And I saw those things, and being 25 years younger than them at the time, going, I don't want to have to deal with that when I'm their age. So taking care of myself and my body now is a better long-term investment in my eyes. So I kind of developed the philosophy of my health is more important than a haircut. So I've always encouraged my guys to take a lunch. Take a half hour, remove yourself from the shop, because you need that mental break.
Oh, definitely.
And if you don't take that, you can really feel a difference at the end of your day.
You really can.
And I think that's part of being responsible as an individual, like self-care. Like, you need to take care of yourself, because you can't expect anybody else to care about your health more than you. And especially in the day and age we are in, the great and mighty 2020, this year of all years, everybody, I feel, should realize that you are responsible for your health.
Yeah.
Don't expect anybody else to give a damn.
Your first person that you should worry about the most is yourself.
And it's unreasonable to expect anyone to put that above their own stuff.
Exactly.
And it is further unreasonable to expect that when they are unaware of that expectation.
The grass is kind of always greener on the other side. I remember when I was starting out in the shop, as I said, I was kind of the walk-in barber. All I wanted to do was be busy. All I wanted to do was just cut hair. And I was just jealous of the barbers that were cutting hair and I wasn't. And now that I am, other than the owner, I'm the most senior barber including both locations. And I'm basically, if not the busiest, one of the busiest barbers there. I get jealous of, unfortunately, the people that aren't cutting hair all day. I wish I could sit down. It's a lot easier now with appointments, but there are some times that I'm just like, oh man, I wish I could do just like one day of like 3 haircuts and like just be able to sit down. It would be so good.
Well, and there are different stages in like careers where when you're a young barber, in the profession, you're growing a clientele. So the hustle and the dedication and the taking anything that'll sit in your chair, like that's where that should take place, because
definitely.
you're growing your clientele. It's you grow it first, and then you can tailor it to exactly what you want to do all day. So, for where you were at that point in your career is extremely reasonable to be feeling those things.
Oh,
and
yeah, definitely.
especially with seeing other people in a shop and how they do things slightly differently and how that affects their business overall.
And right now, I am at the point where I do have the client base, and I am slowly starting to morph it a little bit into things I wish to be doing more. And not going to lie, COVID helped with that a lot. I've always been big into the longer hair greaser styles. I know they were kind of big a couple of years ago. They're slowly starting to taper away as we get more into European styles, but I've always loved that style. And the fact that so many people got through that awkward phase with their hair and laying nicely and flowing, I'm just like, I can now start catering people to, one, let me cut their hair that style, but also hopefully cater them in a way that they will want to keep it.
Well, and I feel during that 2 months of being able to grow hair, you got two teams of people. You have the people that are using their haircut as a way to regain control over their life in a small way and go, bring me back to normal. And using it as an anchor point. And then you have the group that found out what their hair could do if you just leave it alone and really, really like it and start to enjoy it, unlike, they may have struggled in the past with a particular area or a cowlick that was just like, with the length that they wore it at was just a problem. And then they made it past that awkwardness and found a new love for a new look.
Oh, definitely. The amount of people that I have seen struggle with the whorl or back of their head area, because it's always been cut short, because it's always, if they don't cut it short, stands up. Now they understand what we say, why don't cut it, let it grow. It will lay down. I know it's awkward now, but it will lay down.
And I mean, we do live in a time, in a place that patience is in short supply. And that is one of those silver linings about the great 2020 is that
people are kind of forced into
learn
being
patience or don't. One consequence is much worse than the other.
Yeah.
So many silver linings in this year that I'm one of those people that's like, ooh, shiny, but in figurative ways. Physically, shiny things is just like, oh, all right, cool. But figuratively, like when you have a silver lining, I'm very captured by it. So this year, I'm a weirdo. I'm always having anxiety stuff because I consider like comfort to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like I'm not good with being content. So this progress and this change and this the constant adaptation that this year has brought is like really nice for me. I'm working myself into it. Like, all right, yeah, let's go. What next? Come on.
I mean, there's just some people comfortable with, ever changing and almost even chaos. I'm not the most comfortable with it, but I think I've definitely adapted to it better. And now I'm becoming more comfortable with it. But we're also starting to see the air quotes, new normal that is coming along with it, and how that's now becoming, how that's basically becoming, I guess the new normal would be the best way to put it, even though in a couple months it will be changing again.
Well, and I think the ability to constantly change and shift and be comfortable with that is a handy tool to have in our profession, especially because trends are constantly changing.
Oh, definitely.
Like what was popular when I first opened my shop in 2013 is not what is popular now. Like when it comes to products, when it comes to styles, when it comes to everything, it is just not the same. And, I go back to, learning in school and that great divide of the 60s and 70s when barbers weren't willing to adapt and they suffered the consequences because of it.
Oh, huge consequences, yeah.
And I keep that in the back of my head going, you know what, we need to keep up on these things. And we are given the ability to connect with the entire world so we can see those trends coming 3 years out.
Yeah.
And, get our skill set polished up for when it finally hits New England. Because it takes a while.
It does take a while for stuff to get here. Generally it does start New York City, and then I think it slowly kind of works its way up from the south, maybe pop over to Boston and then work its way up from the south a little more.
I found, because I moved here 10 years ago from Arizona, but I'm originally from Ohio. So I found with a lot of like fashion trends, what was popular in Arizona when I first moved there, because I lived there for 3 years and then moved here. By the time I moved to New Hampshire, those styles that were around for 3 years were just starting.
We're just starting.
So I feel like it's a lot of things start in Europe and then hop over to the West Coast very quickly.
I could see that.
Because there's a lot of travel between, and then migrate their way east.
Slowly work their way over, yeah.
Because, New York definitely is cutting edge, but in a very different way from West Coast.
I've only ever been on the West Coast twice. Once was in Oregon, and the other one was in Southern California. So my knowledge of the West Coast is very limited.
Well, I look at it as like, I mean, look at our networks on Instagram and the way that that social media platform has brought the network of barbering together around the world.
Yeah.
Like I follow over 1,000 barbering or cosmetology pages just for the podcast page.
Yeah.
That's not even counting what I follow for the shop page. And being able to see stuff from Brazil to France to northern southern California, like being able to see everybody and the different ways that they do things is unlike anything that we could have imagined even in 2010.
And Russia. I don't know what it is, but those guys are mad about haircuts right now. I think half like the traditional or old school haircut pages I follow are from Russia or connected to Russia in some way.
Well, and I imagine just from I'm pulling it out of the history books now. The Nomad Barber, when he did his tour around the world, and it was entirely crowdfunded, and that project was so great for somebody who was fresh out of barber school when he did that. Is phenomenal with opening up our mind and opening up our world to going, this is literally the world of barbering.
Oh, definitely.
And the different things that they do, and different cultures like focus on different things that are accessories to barbering. Because I mean, we all center around hair.
Yeah.
But some countries care way more about ear hygiene as a barber auxiliary than facial stuff or skincare or full-on massage. And it's mind-blowing for somebody who didn't even think about cutting hair when they decided that one day they would open a barbershop.
Yeah. I had no idea what I was actually getting into, not only when I started barbering, but when I actually started working, and just how big the world actually is, but at the same time how small the world actually is. I know of a fair amount of barbers, not just in New Hampshire because of the school that we went to, but because of how many people they know and how many people they know. And the barbering world is very big, but it's very small at the same time.
Oh, especially around here.
Oh, yeah.
Because for the longest time, we had 600 barbers in the state of New Hampshire, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But now it's probably pushing 3,000 or 4,000.
I'm pretty sure we're pushing about 4,000 now,
Yeah.
with how it just seems like every other month or so, I'm hearing or learning about a new barbershop opening up in the States, either by Instagram, like, oh, hey, follow this page, or, just seeing someone promote one of their friends opening up a shop. Yeah, I think we're pretty close over 4,000 now.
There are so many shops opening in the state. It is crazy to think where we were in 2013 compared to now. And that's such a small window of time.
It really is.
When it comes to a profession. But, I mean, if you're starving for something for so long, eventually somebody's going to fill the need.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it may have taken 10 years, but the market has finally decided that we're going to start making good quality barber chairs again.
I saw that. I'm
there's a
very
market.
happy to see some of those chairs. Those are some really nice chairs.
But it took a while.
It did. It
And
really did.
It took somebody identifying, going, wow, why is every barber looking on Craigslist for a chair built in the 30s? You go, because yours suck.
Look, I just don't want a foot pump. That's the biggest. I just don't want a foot pump.
As somebody who recently converted their entire shop to new barber chairs, I will say that foot pump has its pros and its cons.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. I just do not want a foot pump.
It took me a little bit to get used to, but now when I experience a hand pump, I'm searching for the foot pedal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, right. My bad. But now, like I said, I just upgraded the entire shop to a chair that's like my chair in my room. And I love it just because I'm not mechanically inclined. And I got tired of putting my hand up to my elbow in 40 weight oil when I had to work on the base of a barber chair because something came loose. And I'm okay with buying stuff at a certain point in my career that has a warranty.
I am mechanically inclined, and I remembered at the school that there was a chair there for a while that was in pieces. And
Oh, it's still there.
oh, not that one. A different. There were multiple chairs. Let me reiterate. There was multiple chairs in pieces, but there was
are
one
always
chair.
chairs in pieces.
There was one chair that was in pieces, but those pieces were mostly put together, so it was mostly just putting together big pieces.
Was it wood? Was it?
It was metal. It was.
Metal?
I want to say it was a. It was. I think it was a Belmont. Yeah, I would bet money it was a Belmont. And I remember one day, I'm going to put that chair together, and it took me the whole day. And I'm pretty sure half the bolts that were in that collection did not go to that chair. But when I was done, it was assembled, and you could sit in it without it falling apart. So I took that as a victory.
When every other bolt's a flathead.
No, I'm pretty sure half the bolts in there were like metric.
Oh.
Yeah. And like different threading and like that chair held, but I'm a little surprised it did.
That is one thing I believe is very signature to the NESOB experience is that there is always a chair in pieces. And it's really, I think, a secret test to the masterminds of the Karens that we're just going to leave this here and see
what
who
happens.
Can't stand it.
And if you can't, don't go into the basement because there's 5 more.
Not anymore.
Oh, really?
Oh, no. They decided to put them together in the classroom.
Oh, good.
Things have changed with COVID. There's changes.
Good.
A lot of changes. There are doors that weren't there before.
See, I cannot remember the last time I was there. Actually, I can't. Now that I said, I actually can't remember the last time I was there. So I am now a father. I have a 3-year-old, and I had the utmost honor to give Miss C the very first haircut of my son. And
Nice.
It's very funny that
That was the last time you were there?
No. The last time I was there was when Mr. C gave a haircut to my son.
Okay.
But I did want to roll into, I did just want to say that it is surprising that a 1-year-old sit more still than a 40-year-old for their first haircut compared to someone who's been getting haircuts for years.
I've experienced both sides of that coin. I have some kids for customers that are phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
I love them. I'm so happy that I've been able to see them grow for the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't wait to see them graduate high school. And then I have some customers who are well into adulthood that can't sit up straight. And this is not through physical ailment.
Oh, yeah.
This is just through lack of self-control or obliviousness. I don't know. Everybody has those customers.
Yeah. My favorite are the ones that don't relax their shoulders.
That's where they hold all their stress.
Yeah. Just relax. It's okay here.
One of my favorite things was actually teaching middle schoolers proper posture just by gliding their shoulders back to where their shoulder blades actually touch the back of the chair.
Yeah.
And you go, that is where it's supposed to be.
That works great because a lot of times they slouch forward.
Oh, to the
and
point.
And then, of course, their head is a mile away from you in the first place. Yeah, no, just gently grab onto the shoulders and pull back. And it's just, not only does it pull their shoulders back, but it erects their head back up and oh, yes. Now your haircut will not take an hour.
And this is for my back as well as yours.
Yes, that is very true.
Because we do this 10 to 20 times a day.
Well, right now I do it 8, but I used to do it 10 to 15 times a day.
Yeah, that is one thing with the whole restrictions for New Hampshire. We don't have a ton anymore, technically, I guess.
Yeah, I know they've relaxed a little bit.
But compared to the rest of the country, we're pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the appointment thing. I've been all appointments for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So that part of it didn't change for me.
And same with me. I've been appointments for I've been working there so like 4 years. Yeah. So I'm very used to appointments as well.
Now, did your location still take walk-ins with like a newer barber?
Oh, we still take walk-ins. Yeah.
Okay.
If a walk-in comes in, generally try to get the newest people to take them, as you know, most likely their appointment books are not as filled as someone else's. I generally will not take a walk-in unless, if I have the time, awesome. But if no one else can take them, I try to put everyone before me because I've been there the longest. I have more experience than most of the people there, so I want them to get the experience.
And you're more likely to have your books filled because you have a large clientele.
Exactly. You know, I've been there. I've had people come to me because they've walked in, got an appointment with someone. Next time they come in, that person's not there, and then they give someone else a chance. And then next time they come in, that person's not there. And after a couple of times, I've had people book with me because every time they've been there for the other person, I've been there, and I'm still there. So,
Yeah, being the consistency
yeah.
is huge, and you can apply that to hours, you can apply that to pricing, you can apply it to days of the week. Like if you offer consistency, people are happy with that because it means stability, which
Yeah.
means it's something they can count on.
Yeah.
And because you're the consistent face, then they know you're going to be there.
Oh yeah. In where we are in Newmarket, it is a very young family town, and you know you got. I know it's not really going on now with COVID, but you have the families with 3 kids, and each has their own sports, and you got baseball practice at 4, you got dinner at 5, you got football at 7. Like they need to know that when they're getting anything with their schedule, it's going to be stable. It's not going to be thrown off.
Well, and have you found that your clientele, especially the ones that are used to being walk-ins, that with our restrictions and requirements to have appointments only right now, that they're learning the pluses of appointments, and especially if you have a booking system that they were previously unfamiliar with, that it's really like kind of nudge them in the direction of, look, we're not telling you you have to, the state's telling you you have to, so if you want an appointment, here's how you do it.
So for us in Newmarket, appointments are actually 90% of our business. We do get walk-ins now and then, but it's predominantly appointments. So they were actually kind of already set with it. The Portsmouth location, Portsmouth is a very impulsive town. It's a very go out for a walk. Hey, a sandwich shop. Hey, I want a sandwich. You know, a barbershop. I want a haircut. So I would say more for Portsmouth being impulsive and more tourist driven, that it is kind of causing people more to book appointments and learn about appointment booking than it would be for Newmarket.
And that's what we've kind of experienced with our clientele, because I've always been the one that had the ultimate goal of doing appointments for myself as the shop owner, because I want to control my time and do specific things that the rest of the barbers don't do.
Yeah.
And 2 of my barbers were walk-in only because they've been here just over 2 years. So, like, they're the newest. So they don't have the clientele that the rest of us have built up. So walk-ins were really, really easy for them. I found that because downtown Laconia has always been known for haircuts, and especially now that we have 3 barbershops on the same side of the road.
Oh, yeah.
Like, within 5 doors of each other. They just gravitate downtown here, whether they're from here or not. It just, there is some sort of force in the universe that's like, let's just go downtown and we'll find a haircut.
We will find something.
No matter what state we're from. But, so we've always had a walk-in base, but now with the requirement for them to do appointments, and with us being a 5 barber shop right now, we don't always have time to, like, the conversation over the phone when it comes to making an appointment, especially a first appointment. It takes so much time. And because we're appointments, we only have an allotted time to work on the customer we have in our chair. So it's because of that, we typically don't do appointments over the phone unless necessary.
Yeah.
Typically, we will steer people towards our website where you can see the whole schedule
We do the same thing.
and
Yeah.
book at your leisure.
Yep.
Just make sure you're doing it at least 12 hours in advance.
Yeah, we do the same exact thing. Unfortunately, there are times where people call us and go to the website. It'll show you everything you need to know, the times, the barbers, everything. But if you have any trouble, call us back. And then 10 minutes later, there's the call back because there's always trouble. There's always something that didn't load right, or they just didn't see what they were looking for.
What system do you use?
Reserva.
I know a lot of shops that use Reserva.
Yeah. Now, speaking of phone calls and all that, I know of one shop in the area that actually is not answering their phones. So if you call them, they're not going to answer. So they're basically forcing people, and for any form of communication, you have to go to the website.
I mean, I think the only time I've ever not answered the phone while in the shop was one single Monday where everybody was either their regular day off or on vacation. And I ended up working by myself. And I had a full day. So I just made a very nice answering machine message.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sorry, if the website can't answer your question, leave me a message and I'll get back to you when I can.
The only times I try not to answer the phone are if the shop is not open. But that comes from me working in retail.
Oh, I'm still compelled to answer the phone
Yeah,
all the way from school.
That's why I say I try. 7 out of 10 times I will answer it. If I am literally everything is shut down and I'm walking to the door to lock the door and the phone rings, no, I am not answering that phone.
I have 1 foot out the door. It's not happening.
It is not happening. No.
Well, especially with a shop so long as ours, that if that were the case and we were going out the front, I have to walk the entire length of the shop, and I've got 3 rings to do it, and it ain't happening.
Yeah, no. I mean, our phone technically is right next to the door, but no. I'm gone.
Well, in our old shop, we had a rotary phone, so it was only incoming calls.
I miss rotary phones.
I will say that having a real bell in your phone demands it be answered.
Oh, it does. It does.
It commands it.
It does.
And I mean, it was powder blue, so customers loved it.
Oh, yeah.
And then when one of the teenagers got dropped off by mom or dad, and then they had to call them, I'm like, if you don't have a cell phone, I can't help you.
Oh man, I wish I could have seen that. Plus, I mean, it just goes with with you. You like the more vintage style, and seriously, what's more vintage than a rotary phone?
Oh, I have a candlestick phone and a bell box that I'm trying to get rewired. Buddy, when I do, that's gonna be a house phone.
Good.
And that'll be the only way I'll be willing to answer for telemarketers. I'm answering on a candlestick phone that works. All right, so right out of barber school is when you started working at Scuttlebutt. And so, did you have a previous relationship with the owner, or was it hey, you're in a location where I want to be, or especially with your background from Vermont, it's kind of a ways.
So actually, yes. So when I toured the school with my dad, I was wearing, I had this iconic Coast Guard hoodie that I wore everywhere. Even though I was never in the Coast Guard, being a Coast Guard brat, I would proudly proclaim the Coast Guard. And the owner of Scuttlebutt had been in the Coast Guard. So I remember he walked over to me and he asked me if I was in the Coast Guard. And I said, no, my dad was. And not only did we learn that he was in the Coast Guard, but both him and my father were the same rank in the Coast Guard, rate in the Coast Guard. And that was an hour conversation that took place. And I remember, and then when I went back to fill out my paperwork to officially sign up, the owner was there again, still doing his education. And I told him, We kind of connected a little bit. But the biggest thing was I remember when I was getting out into the workforce, looking for a job, I never forgot about him. And he had come by the school before, being like, looking for people, because at that time the shop was still walk-ins, and both him and the other barber that was there, they were doing 20 haircuts a day. Like, they were getting tired and they needed someone. And I remember that first availability I had, I literally went to the shop, one check it out, but I told him, I am going to work for you. I didn't ask for a job interview. I didn't ask him, can I work for you? I told him I'm going to work for you. And I think because he was so laden with just the amount of haircuts they were doing, he said, okay.
Are you saying he agreed out of desperation?
Probably. But yeah, that was how I got my job at Scott. I literally walked up to him and said, I'm going to work for you.
Hey, if it works.
It worked, yeah.
You've been there for quite a long time now.
Yeah.
And still happy.
I would agree, yeah.
So how was it? Because you got a front row seat when it came to Nate and growing from one shop to two and adjusting from walk-ins to appointments.
Yeah.
From a barber to a manager's point of view, what were some of the struggles that you saw with that?
Well, in regards to what?
Just an outside perspective on like seeing what an owner goes through, or like some of the stresses that get put onto barbers while transitions are happening.
Oh, okay. So, as I said previous, I had worked retail for 6 years, and I was an assistant store manager when I left retail. So I already had experience with managing. I am also the kind of person that, because of my retail experience, because of the managers I had ahead of me, and once again, because of my dad, because being an officer, he was technically a manager in the military, I basically learned that you basically take care of situations yourself. And if you can't, you get someone who can. And 9 out of 10 times, I figured out how to take care of stuff myself. So if there was a customer or an issue, and I was there, but even if I wasn't the manager, but I was there, I would take care of it, because that's what I was trained to do. You take care of the problem. And if you can't, you get someone who can. So there was that. Now, seeing transitions of the owner, I will admit in the beginning, so when I started working at Scuttlebutt, the shop was still quite new. I mean, the shop opened the end of 2015. So it wasn't even a year old when I started working there. And to be honest, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to work there. I was fearful. I was actually afraid that if I went to an already established busy shop, that I would not grow as quickly as if I was into a new shop, because it would be a slower build instead of a very quick, rapid build that I might fall off and fail from. So that was one of the reasons why I went to Scuttlebutt. And not only was I dealing with me being new to the profession, I was actually dealing with a boss who was new to the profession as well, because he was also trying to learn bits and pieces about not only being a barber, but actually being a shop owner as well.
And I have a barber that works with me that was in a very similar position, only when he got his worker's permit in school, he was actually like helping us build the shop.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been with me this entire time. So in the absence of being able to interview and talk with him about it, because the likelihood of getting like real, solid, brutally honest answers out of somebody that currently works with you is very slim. But I definitely was very interested in the perspective of someone who is subject to the decisions of a shop owner, and how that might affect you, and especially seeing the growth of somebody in that role over time.
Now, one other thing about Scuttlebutt is we're actually employees.
Okay, so you like straight up
we're
W-2 hourly
straight up
wage?
W-2. Well, not straight up hourly, but it's one of those setups where if if I went an entire week and did not cut any hair, I would make an hourly wage. But since I do cut hair, I actually make commission because it is better than my hourly wage. So I
Okay.
always get the best. If I only did 5 haircuts and that does not exceed my hourly rate, I make my hourly rate. So I always have.
It's similar to like a sales job that has
Yeah,
commission.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like very popular with like California. I think that's how a lot of California shops do it right now.
California is a very ever-changing.
It totally is. It totally is.
Because their independent contractor laws and
yeah,
all that kind of stuff that
yeah,
changes. I can't keep up.
I mean, hell, I remember half the laws the retail store I worked at, they had to be different because of the state laws of California. I mean, one little tidbit is, most store managers are salary. In California, they're mandatory have to be hourly.
Yeah, because it's one of those, like, they feel as though salaried workers are being taken advantage of when they're ending up working like 60 to 70
60
hours a week
and
because
more
you're
than that
doing
even.
extra things.
Yeah.
And it's like you're just robbing them of something. Like if they were an hourly rate, they'd be making so much more money.
Yeah.
And thus, California would be making so much more money on the taxes,
True.
which is what they ultimately care about.
But yeah, so and I know, especially in the New England area, like employee shops or shops that are employer employee are not as common as booth renter. You know,
That's changing though.
is
Like,
it?
I've talked to a few that kind of have that setup, or there are some that have straight up employees.
Wow.
If you give them a proper hourly wage, or like it's kind of like offsetting the amount of money that we can make per hour if we're just pocketing everything at cost, versus offering a living wage paycheck with the ability to have benefits. Because once you have so many people on your payroll, that becomes a lot more feasible.
Yeah.
But that is a whole, like, I choose to not
Oh.
do that because that is a whole nother tax
And
situation.
I am like, I have no idea how big of a headache Nate has gotten because of things like that. You know, I don't even like learning to do my own taxes for the little bit amount of time that I started working at Scuttlebutt, being an independent contractor to W-2. That was a headache enough for me. And he's kind of sort of, I mean, thankfully he has an accountant, but I mean, he is still getting a headache from all the stuff now he has to worry about of not only hourly, but like overtime and just all that extra stuff that comes in with having employees.
Well, and also the requirement to provide so much more than if you were booth renting to somebody. Because if you booth rent to somebody, it's like renting a space. It's
It's like, okay, have fun.
you need something, you better get it.
Yeah.
As opposed to, where if your shop needs something because it is your business and you have employees, where, like with the PPE situation, going, that's a hurdle. Not so much anymore, but it was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still kind of a hurdle when the convenience of buying masks in a brick and mortar store
Yeah.
is like way jacked up in price compared to waiting for the uncertainty of Amazon Prime.
I mean, not only that, but like right now with Barbicide, good luck finding Barbicide. And if you do, good luck it being the price you're used to it being.
I mean, I'm fortunate in my previous orderings of Barbicide just because there was a few years where I accidentally ordered a ton. And that just
Hey,
came
it's not
in handy.
perishable. It's not perishable. It's still good.
It just came in handy, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I have a whole case.
Yeah.
But things like Barbicide wipes or blade washer, really anything in our profession right now that's disinfectant,
Yeah.
good luck. I have one barber who is not a fan of Cool Care, so he prefers another brand, and he's having a heck of a time finding it.
Yeah.
But I have since, gone to. I used to provide them with a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I also, with the caveat that if you have a different preference, then you can go find that preference.
And before we were employees, Nate was the same exact way. He's like, these are the things I like. I will provide them. If you prefer something different, perfectly okay, but that's on you. And like one of them would be like razor blades. You know, he provided he still, I mean, does Dorcos. I for a while preferred Dorco Primes, so I got myself Dorco Primes. I have since then I've actually stopped and just carry the Dorcos. But for my straight edge, my feather, I actually buy my own razors for that because I like the higher quality of that, especially when it comes to a service like straight edge shaving that I covet so much. That is my favorite service. Like you, if I could do shaves every day, all day, I would, and I would have the best day at work.
That is one nice thing that I've found lately is that there's a strong uptick in facial shaves
Yes.
and the facial procedures that I also offer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, I'm not complaining. You want to fill my day with these things and I'm not covered in hair at the end of the day? Bring it on.
It's one of those things I wish I was at the Portsmouth location. Portsmouth being a much more urban setting for the state, much more business oriented. There's a lot more shaves in Portsmouth than there is in Newmarket, a smaller town, young family.
Closer to a college.
Yeah. Most people there are like my face is right now, scruffy or some form of facial hair on it. But mine's just laziness.
As with others.
Yeah.
Or just neglect because they're too busy studying for finals.
Well, I think
Until they discover that the mask with facial hair is very uncomfortable.
yes. Although mine's not that bad. Of course, every day it always gets to a point where I just get sick of it, so I just put a clipper to my face.
Yeah, we've got somebody here that works and does that. But
Yeah.
that's like his look, is the 5 days of growth.
Mm-hmm.
He could pull it off.
I think for me, it's when it gets to a point where it's either like, okay, are you literally growing a beard or what? And then I literally just turn on my magic clip and I just take it off.
I make a point to always ask my customers if I notice that is what they have on their face.
Yeah.
I always ask, I go, so are we growing it or are we just being lazy? Because that will determine what I'm going to do with your sideburns.
I mean, half the time people would be like, actually, could you just take it off for me? And I'd be like, done. And then, I mean, what does it take? 5 seconds to take off something like that off their face? Like,
Depends on how many road bumps they got.
touche. Usually they don't have a lot.
So moving forward, when it comes to 2020 and like, what do you see yourself doing? Obviously, you're very happy where you are right now, and what you got going on. Are you looking forward and just gonna plan on being there for a few more years? Do you have long-term plans? What you got?
So the only really long-term plan that I actually have is people from Vermont seem to always go back to Vermont. It might take them 40, 50 years, but they always go back to Vermont. And even though my original plan was to open a shop and, do all that stuff, I never lost it. I might have gotten buried and lost in the confusion when my dad passed away, but I never fully lost it. So I could honestly see myself at the standard retirement age, whatever that is now, of literally going back to Vermont and opening a one-chair shop and literally cutting hair maybe Tuesday through Thursday, 8 to noon, and then be done with it. But that is a very far off thought right now.
Especially with a 3-year-old.
Oh yeah, especially with a 3-year-old. Yeah, no, right now I guess right now I'm just kind of maintaining status quo.
And I think that's what everybody's kind of like working the holding pattern and,
Oh, yeah.
Shifting when it needs to be shifted and just working through this year because it's like walking through pudding.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, so some people are like, can we be done? Like, is it New Year's yet? And there are other people who are like, it is already August. The kids are already going back to school.
I know. In Newmarket right now, things have actually slowed down a little bit because this is generally the time where most families would be doing their end of summer vacation before school starts back up. And I think more people are adamant about this trip because this is probably the first trip they've taken since quarantine started. So it's almost a ghost town-ish to the point that it's surprising how people are now being able to get out and actually possibly enjoy life, what it may be.
Well, welcome to the Lakes region where everyone came.
Yes.
Literally everyone
Oh,
is here.
I know. I drive 16 home, and every weekend it is a struggle.
Gridlock.
Yes.
But I mean, we're greatly blessed because of that.
Oh, yeah,
We
definitely.
can handle that many people and still keep our numbers really low
Yeah.
because everybody's outside on a boat or in a kayak or hiking or on a bicycle.
Yeah, and we're close enough to Hampton and Portsmouth that we get enough of the outside there, but not so much that it's overwhelming.
Right,
Most of
because
the
like
people,
I feel like there's a lot more weekend people
yes,
for beaches.
yes.
Because that's the commodity. It's the, 12 miles of beach that our great Granite State has.
Hey, that is 12 miles more than Vermont, the only landlocked state in New England. And I know everyone's like, oh, you have Lake Champlain. I'm like, it's not an ocean.
But it touches Canada.
It does. And it's the honorary 6th Great Lake. It's still not an ocean.
But it's not. It's not the 6th Great Lake. As somebody from Ohio, it's not.
It is.
If it makes New England feel better, that's fine. But I also don't consider myself from the Midwest.
Yeah, you're not. No, you're not.
I go, we're in the same time zone. Though
Yes.
honestly, I wish we weren't. I wish Northern New England had the same time zone as Nova Scotia
Why?
and didn't practice daylight savings because
Oh, no, I hate daylight savings time.
Well-
I really think we should abolish it.
between giving us another hour and not practicing the moving, we wouldn't have to worry about it getting dark at 4
True.
in the winter. I think it's a novel concept that Massachusetts should get on board with.
Wait, no, it's Newfoundland that's the half an hour. I remember there's one area there's a half an hour, and I realized it's not Nova Scotia, it's Newfoundland Isle.
Oh, that's beyond me.
Yeah, they're an hour and a half ahead of us.
When he got that squiggly part of like Indiana, it's like part of it is in one and another part of it's in another. That's when it's like, why don't you go with state lines?
Yes.
State lines. But you know what? Living in Arizona for 3 years, they don't practice daylight savings.
No, they don't.
And it's amazing, but they
And
don't tell you. So in the
That's
military,
very nice of them.
in the military,
Yeah.
when I got stationed there, first daylight savings, I was like, all right, hours moving back or whatever it is.
So were you early or late?
I was thankfully early. I was like, where is everyone? I'm texting everybody I know, which are all not in that state
Yeah.
and had never been to that state. And they're all like, yeah, daylight savings time happened. And I'm like, well, I'm in the twilight zone then, because nobody's around. This was before Google and
Oh yeah.
like back when iPhones were AT&T specific. I didn't have one. So I had to like ask a physical person.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel old. That's part of the fun though, isn't it? Especially like how many people 10 years younger than you work at your shop?
10 years younger than me? Most of them. There's only 2 people that work at let's just say Scuttlebutt, so it includes both locations. There's only 2 people that work there that are actually older than me. And one of them is the owner.
And yeah, I'm the oldest in the shop now. Typically there's always at least one person older than me that works here,
Yeah.
but we're not into that now, I guess. And the youngest person that works here is 10 years younger than me. And it is always entertaining, the conversations we have and the references that are not understood.
And not only the references they don't get, the references we don't get because we're too old for the references.
I will say that I'm fairly good on picking up some things. If I don't understand it, I at least can pinpoint where it's from.
Yes. Thank you, Internet.
Typically TikTok.
Oh no, I've not gone. I'm not going down that rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
it'll never be on my phone. I don't care about it. It's not my thing.
is on-
If you love it, great.
It
Power
is,
to you.
it is on phones of people I know, and that's it.
But it's like it does have its own culture, and
Oh, definitely.
it's not something that I necessarily understand, but I can decipher it.
Mm-hmm.
Like having enough of a working knowledge, it's handy. And then you can talk to the young people in your chair. It's like knowing just enough about SpongeBob or Pokemon to get through a haircut.
Or the fact that I will admit this, I've never read or watched a Harry Potter movie / book. But because of the internet, I know exactly what happens. I know exactly who everyone are. And I think that frustrates people more because I haven't read them or watched the movies.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to let the audience decide on that one. I will refrain from judging, because
I've been judged plenty of times by coworkers, so.
that's their prerogative. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
I was so glad to have a conversation with you and catch up. I look forward to seeing the great things that Scuttlebutt has in store and some of those
Me too.
awesome vintage haircuts that you post.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for coming in.